9:04, we're here at the 9 o'clock agenda item is county regulations. Ken Verley, possible action item. So I guess I'll let Ken start.
Okay, well thank you for allowing me the time to be on the agenda, and good morning to everybody. I want to talk about some things that happened to me, and I'm going to read from my notes here so that I can kind of keep my facts straight. But about 3 weeks ago, my wife went to the planning office on business regarding a sale of a piece of property that we were selling, and our county sanitarian approached her about an enforcement letter, asked her if she wanted it mailed to her or if she wanted to take it with her, and she said, well, it'd be best to talk to me, because that was my end of the deal. And he said that he'd heard that there was a residence on a piece of our property at the end of the Cougar Gulch Road. And Mr. Reed alleged from that conversation that there must be a sewer on the site and that I had installed it without a permit. I called the sanitarian the next morning and asked if there was a violation, how it would be resolved. And he told me, when the snow melts, and it's a quote, I'll come out and you can show me what you did and I'll write you a permit. I thanked him for the information and we ended our conversation. The alleged property was sold shortly after that conversation, and the new owners were going to build a house and went to the sanitarian office to inquire about getting a sewer permit. Mr. Reed proceeds to tell the folks that I installed an illegal sewer on that property and that Ken Verley has installed 3 illegal sewers in this county, which, by the way, are not true. And then he's going to put a stop to it. He's going to make an example out of me and assess a $500 penalty. The people that bought the property offered multiple times to pay for it. Mr. Reed refused, stating that he will make me pay the violation. These people left in fear that they may have issues getting their permit. As it turns out, Mr. Reed was incorrect in his assessment of the penalty. He caught up with me as I was leaving. I came over here to make an appointment to see you guys, and he came down and said that he found the regulations because he couldn't find them at the time in the office, and found it, and that it was $300, not $500. So he'd already told these people who were buying the property that it was $500 and that he was going to assess me that $500, and had they paid that, it would have been in error. Yeah, in researching the regulations, I found that to be ambiguous. There's another place in there where it talks to that penalty in a different format, and it's a different amount of money. Mr. Reed has not been on this property for 5 years because it's been behind a locked gate and it's posted. So my complaint regarding this issue is that this board, as a county representative, this board has a county representative that is in his duties as a representative of our county, acts inappropriately and unprofessional. In most other county states, violations penalties are not imposed based on conversations picked up in a public meeting. They're based on fact. It is a poor county that we live in that allows the representatives the latitude to persecute a citizen based on rumors. In reading your regulations, it states in nearly every instance that the regs are enforced by the department. I cannot find where the authority has been given to Mr. Reed or the assigned agents. And there's a copy of who the department is, and it clearly says under the authority is the authority of the department. It doesn't say anything about assigned agents. It does say that your county sanitarian is an assigned agent, but it doesn't anywhere spell out his duties or give him the authority. Everything it says the department in these regulations. So it's also very unethical for your employees to verbally attack or criticize me or any other citizen in front of people who are our neighbors and people who are just moving to our county. It's libelous and slanderous. I've also recently learned that county officials that step outside of their authority have the potential to be personally liable. To name, I have multiple problems with the actions of Mr. Reed. Approaching my wife in a public place is inappropriate and unethical, to say the least. Mr. Reed should not be telling folks bad, untrue things about local contractors and taxpayers that are slanderous and libelous. I cannot find the regulations where Mr. Reed has the authority to administer penalties. Mr. Reed should have his facts in order before he approaches anyone regarding penalties, 500 versus 300. Investigations need to be made, facts obtained, and according to our county regulations, certain steps are followed regarding notification. Review county regs as there is ambiguity in their clauses. On another issue, Western Reclamation is the company that I own, a construction company, and I built multiple subdivision roads in this county, installed sewers in 3 different states, installed literally miles of municipal water and sewer lines. On past projects, especially subdivision projects, we have been required to put down crushed gravel as a top coat on a subdivision road, while others have been allowed to do pit run gravel. Oh, Mr. Reed and I have discussed this before, and it's still going on today. In front of you is a Mineral County road specifications. It's very clear what the regs are, yet they are not adhered to equally. Driveway approaches is another one that's in front of you as well. I mean, they're all over this county. We all drive by them every day. They're put in without permits. Nobody gets penalized for that. Nobody. Everybody sees it. They're everywhere. Another complaint, the St. Regis Flea Market is a big draw to our county. Every year. Last year, I observed our county sanitarian approach the booth of the local scout group and asked to see their permit. These kids were in fear and got their grandmother to address the issue. She was furious that he had approached them and agreed to purchase a permit. Mr. Reed informed her that there was no cost, they just need to have a permit. I thought that was inappropriate. Seems to me like out of courtesy we would maybe work with the organizers of the flea market rather than try to detract from the people that come here to do business. It's embarrassing and intimidates folks, and I just thought it was inappropriate.
I want to see, what was the agenda item? Because I'm afraid we're getting kind of far afield.
County regulations.
Okay.
Which is pretty broad.
Yeah.
County regulations.
Because I'm concerned that this is becoming it's a
fact-finding mission regarding the regulations and how they're implemented. So.
Right, but just the complaints, you know, we have every citizen that comes in and takes the time of the commissioners to lay out significant complaints. I'm concerned about the process.
Complaints, and that's the job of the commissioners, in my opinion.
Okay.
So, just back, did you have an issue building a driveway or a road, Ken? Is that
many of them? I can go through them. I mean, it'd take you all day.
Oh, but with Tim?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been before Sean Donovan and Tim regarding this thing before, and it's still going on today. There's one going on in St. Regis right now, and I can go through the regs with you and show you where they're not being followed multiple times.
Okay.
In summary, I've hoped to point out that there's a lack of consistencies in who and how Mineral County regulations are implemented in oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. There's one other page here I need to go back to regarding addresses. My last issue is a property I recently sold. Was given the address of 1042 Sierra Iron Mountain Road, and when I sold the property at closing, we learned that the address had been changed without our knowledge. Seems to me that if our addresses are going to be changed without proper notification, it could be potential to have a huge liability to our county. The street signs need to be changed, people need to be notified. Emergency vehicles can't get to that address if they don't know what that address is or what the location is. I understand from the Postal Service that it's something to do with the mapping statewide through our planning commissions. So that's a real concern that we're changing addresses on people. People aren't notified, street signs aren't changed. Seems to me like rather than doing some of the things we should be doing, we should be paying attention to those things as well. In summary, I hope to point out that there is a lack of consistency who and how Mineral County regulations are implemented and administered by the Planning and Sanitation Office. These issues become especially problematic when we try to entice people and businesses to join us in our county. We're one of the poorest counties in the state. We need to try and befriend and accommodate as much as possible rather than be a hindrance and apply the rules however the person sees fit at the time. The flea market and the subdivision rules are a small example of Mr. Reed's actions. I totally agree with having policies that benefit our county but demand to be consistent. I will tell this board that I'm more than willing to pay any violation I have coming to me as long as the rules are consistent for everyone and penalties are assessed equally and not by a pick and choose mentality that we see today. I'd like to see a motion from the board to review past complaints, investigate the actions of your employee and act accordingly. Nearly every day in the news we hear about abuse of power in public offices, and to me this is a classic example. I would encourage the board to open up this up for public comment. Thank you for your time.
And the public comment would be on
Any of it.
Everything you brought up?
Anything that I brought
Okay.
up.
Yeah, does anybody have any comment on the general area of Mr. Verley's comments?
Well, I'll start out. I'm Ron Warren, Rocky Mountain Surveyors, and one of the issues I've been having is rural addresses. A lot of the surveys that I do, I have to put an address on my applications that I do. And so if it's an existing tract of land that's out there that's owned by deed, and you have to have a rural address for those. It's a 911 emergency services issue. I can't get addresses from Tim Reed's office. There is no building permit in Mineral County. So apparently Tim is using the rural address to stop people from being able to do anything with their property till they come in and tell him what they're going to do. And then he selectively decides if he's going to give them a rural address or not. So I've had 8 jobs this year. I can't get rural addresses on 3 of them. He's gave 5 people addresses, so he's selecting who he gives addresses to and who he doesn't. Any other county, you want a rural address on an existing piece of property, you call the county, they give it to you, period. If it's an existing tract of land, it has an address. Tim's using that to control development in the county. The main survey that I use rural addresses for is floodplain surveys. And when people are buying property, or if they're planning to develop their property, they want clarification where the floodplain is at. So I do LOMAs, or flood elevation certificates, for them. Submit those to FEMA, and FEMA will give you a clarification on whether the property's in or out of the floodplain. Well, I can't submit those unless I have an address for the property. Tim refuses to give me the address. I've been contacting the county attorney's office. I've asked for a personal meeting with the county attorney. I haven't had one of those set up yet. She's backing Tim on not having him give out rural addresses. This is ridiculous.
And just to be fair, I mean, Mr. Tim Reed isn't here. He's given you a reason on why he hasn't been able to give you a rural address on a couple of those
He hasn't
properties.
responded to me on any of them, period.
Okay,
he
but-
might have told
but-
you a reason, but he hasn't.
Right, because you and I have corresponded. I mean,
A little bit.
yes, we've emailed, and I did ask for a few extra
So you ask
weeks.
him, you ask him in the email or you ask him on the phone?
I've called his office, I've sent him emails, I've sent the county attorney emails.
And I've emailed back, to
Since
be fair.
January, I've been trying to get an address.
So what does he
on
say
it.
on the phone? Well, Ron,
I haven't got him. He hasn't called
Oh,
me back. He
okay.
hasn't returned
Oh.
any calls. I've talked to his secretary. She says I've relayed the information to him, and that's all I can do.
so as far as you know, you haven't heard of it?
And frankly, I mean, here, it's the same issue that we've had in the past with Tim, and no offense, Ellen, but you're new to the area and don't know Mineral County, and you haven't been involved in this area of law. And so it's no different than when Sean was here. He would use his knowledge, and essentially, even when Marcia was here at times, would hold up subdivisions in the past or whatever it was that you're working on, basically, and then go up and tell a story to the county attorney until someone like Ron his client has to hire me to come in and say to him, no, you're dead wrong. And then at that point in time, you got a client that's just trying to build a house or something like that, that's into an extra $5,000, and then misses a season to build, and it delays things to make it just so unbearable out here. I mean, when you talk to people in Missoula that are developers and things like that, they won't touch Mineral County with a 10-foot pole simply because of the pain in the ass that Tim Reed is about delaying things and getting things done. And so what I think what has to be done is similarly is a directive from this commission that says your job isn't to stop things. Your job is to encourage the development of business and housing and people in Mineral County. I mean, we got an opportunity in Mineral County right now that I haven't seen since the days of Diamond. We got IFG. There are people that are going to be wanting to move here and build here, and potentially, hopefully, some industry that'll come to Superior. Because if anybody hasn't noticed, we're not doing really good in Superior. And so, I mean, I think it's really important that you guys manage him. And I understand the hardest part of it is it's an area that none of the three of you have an expertise in, and you have to look to that person for guidance. But if that guidance is meant to mislead you or to delay, it comes back to you guys as being the people that are allowing it to happen. And I agree that the best thing you can do is put oversight, and if necessary, hire someone to review some of these things, because the things like Ron are talking about are little issues. But can you imagine if you're trying to get your house and financing and you can't get a address, simple address for it, how frustrating that would become. And then you're obligated to provide it because you're of the emergency type of situation they've described. It opens up a can of worms of legal lawsuit. You'll find at some point in time someone will have the money to say, you know what, sue them. And it doesn't need to be that way. It just needs to be a new core belief by the county that just, and I believe all three of you have the core belief, and it centers around, let's do something to help Mineral County and make the business and development occur. But when there's one person in the cog that is an important piece to it, is delaying it, it ain't gonna happen. And so I really encourage you to do that, is to make that a directive that says your job is not to say no when you walk in the door. It says yes, but here's what you need to do. And that's all you need to do, and be a facilitator rather than a roadblock. And that's the problem we have right now, is the roadblock situation. Thanks.
Well, and I appreciate, you're right, I'm not from here, but I'm hoping that I bring fresh eyes as the county attorney to this area. I have zero conflicts of interest. I think it's important that you have somebody here who doesn't have any conflict of interest. You and I have corresponded by email. I think it's important to say.
Been over a month.
Well, and I did ask for a few weeks. I made it clear to you that it was very new to me. There's a debate about whether it's a Loma or a Lomer. I'm trying to get up to speed on that. I've sat down with Tim to look at the maps. I think Tim has a legitimate issue. Now, you're right, I'm not an expert in this field, but I think he has a legitimate issue that I want to look at.
Tim's version of what's going on, but you haven't listened to mine.
Right, I've read the documents.
I've requested to come into your office and sit down and explain my side of it.
Right, and I did ask you for a few more weeks.
The commissioners, I'm going to hand out. 2 years ago, Ed Green, we had the same issue with Lomas versus Lomars up at the Borgia, and we went through the full thing with the previous county attorney. After she studied everything, she ordered that Ed be allowed to put his drain field in based on a Loma removing the property from the floodplain. FEMA's guidelines on what a Loma or a Lomar is very clear when you do one versus the other. The cost of doing a Loma for a surveyor is anywhere from $750 to $2,500, depending on how much background that is in an area. To do a Lomar, the minimum cost of a Lomar is $30,000. It's the same thing as they did on Flat Creek. The town of Superior participated in Flat Creek. That ended up being about $36,000, I believe, to do a Lomar on a little tiny stream. If you do it on the Clark Fork River, it's a lot more expensive. You have to do cross sections of the river, up and down river, have an engineer do the HEC-ROS calculations. It says right in here that you would never do that unless you're removing 5 acres from the floodplain, or you're doing a development that's 50 or more lots. It's a very big, major thing to do.
I can't remember that previous incident.
I was reading some of it. And I think, was Susan Swimley involved too?
Was who?
Susan Swimley, does that ring a bell? I've been trying to go back and read some of the material from, with Marcia, but.
Ellen, have you reached out at all and talked to Marcia just about her?
No, I've just started reading the previous information, but no, I haven't talked to her.
I mean, I do these lomas in Missoula County. I do about 50 a year on average.
Mhm.
I do a lot of them. I can't do them unless I have an address for the property.
Mhm.
The floodplain maps that FEMA did in the 1960s, they came out on site and did cross sections of the river, but the USGS quad maps with 40-foot contours is all they had. So they shaded in approximate zone A where the floodplain is at, but they've got an elevation where that flood is. And so what they have us do in the Loma is shoot actual ground elevations on the property, and then they can define where that area A is on the floodplain maps with additional elevation. And so that's what they direct the surveyor to go out and gather that data on a specific datum and give it to them. And then they will adjust their maps. And it's a simple process. It really is.
Now, are they coming out with new maps? It's my understanding that they're finally updating these older ones.
I've done low Mars. I did one for Kenny Jasper on a 20-lot subdivision between here and St. Regis. That's a low Mar. They did a little permit for that. They don't republish FEMA maps for a single individual project.
No, yeah.
It's very expensive. Tim thinks with the low Mar, they republish the maps each time one is done, and they actually don't.
No.
The LOMA, they issue, it's called a letter of map amendment. You log into FEMA's website and you put the address of your property and it'll come up if there's been a LOMA done on it. And so it's easily accessible. You can find every LOMA that's been done in Mineral County. And those are adjustments to the map. They just don't revise the whole map because of one individual piece of property.
No, not just because of one individual, but I was under the understanding that they were doing a whole revision that should be coming out soon, and that was some concerns of Tim's. He hasn't indicated that to you?
There's some kind of ongoing project in Mineral County where they're working on redoing the floodplain maps. It could take 3 years. I can't get any. We redid the maps in Sanders County, and that was about a 4-year process from when they started to ended. Once they started having public hearing on it and notifying the individual landowners, it was about another 2 years before they finalized their study. So I don't know where the process is.
Who does that? Who heads that? Like in Sanders County, who redid it? Who's the head of that?
Sanders County got a grant. It was a $750,000 grant, and they hired HKM Engineering out of Billings, and they did all the study and stuff and got the maps. And it's a FEMA grant.
I see.
And FEMA knows these Zone A areas have to be revised. They go by population, density, and they pick areas, and each year they update the maps and try to make them better. And Mineral County's low on that because of the population of Mineral County. But supposedly there is a process started there, and I haven't heard any more than Tim saying that it's been started. Who knows how long it'll take. So a low Mar, as you see on this little thing I did, it's a letter of map removal. It's actually intended for when land is in the floodplain, really is in the floodplain, and you want to remove it. So they put the little F after it for fill, because you're getting permits to bring fill in and elevate the land to get it out of the floodplain. The LOMA is just, you tell us exactly where the line's at. I'm going to give you some specific elevations, and you tell me whether this is in or out. So that's what LOMA does. We aren't removing land, we're just clarifying where the boundaries.
Or the high spots might be already existing.
Yep.
So if somebody builds on there, it's a validation that you're not in the floodplain, or that you've addressed it or remediated or done something so that the property owner.
And we do them, sometimes they're in, sometimes they're out. But until I send it into FEMA and get the results back, I don't know. I just tell them what the elevations are on the property. And then they send a letter back and tell me what the outcome of the survey is. Is the structure in or out? Is the land in or out? Because if there's not a structure on the property yet, then I do a small topo map with contours and send them that data. And then they'll tell me what's in or out of that specific elevation.
Like the maps are so antiquated, like my lot, I had to have Ron come out and do one of these for me, I'm probably at least 60 feet above the Clark Fork River. And even though the way they just did their maps, I was still in the floodplain based on these old maps, but it was it's a simple process, a matter of him coming out and surveying it and getting it in, and then I had to do that to get my financing, to build the house. All of that stuff was,
all hinges on it, yeah.
Right, but it's the maps are antiquated, but it's an easy process that's allowed to do it. I mean, because they can simply look at the elevations and say, well, it's clear you're not in it. And
I just submitted one last week for a piece of property above Superior, and the river bank from the edge of the water to the top of the bank is 97 feet. That property on the FEMA maps is indicated in the floodplain. It's ridiculous. You know, so I send it into FEMA. I got their rural address. It had it on the Montana cadastral, and a lot of properties don't have an address on cadastral. That one did, so I put the address off of cadastral. It was the wrong address. The owners called me and said, we just got an electrical permit, and Tim gave us a new address, and it's wrong. So I had to send an application into FEMA, and now they froze the whole thing up because I gave them the wrong address, and they're restarting the whole application process to correct the address on it. What a pain, and I thought I had it. So they'll process these. I can look at a piece of property and go, okay, I got a rural address above and below. I'll just split it and give this thing an address and send these applications in, and then I'll deal with correcting it later because I can't get an address. And this is really affecting my business in Monroe County. And as Lan said, I've lost a lot of business here because people think I can't get jobs done, so they go and hire somebody in Missoula. People in Missoula come here and do 1 or 2 jobs, and they go, we aren't coming back there anymore. This is a pain in the butt. And so then people are coming back to me again. But I've done a majority of the surveying in Mineral County. Our company has, and my dad, for over 50 years now.
So what are the reasonings that he's not giving you the addresses? What is he
He wants us to guarantee that we'll do a LOMAR on these properties instead of a LOMA. A LOMAR is the wrong survey. People can't afford to do a $30,000 survey. I mean, the one at DeBorgia that started this in January, the lady owns 2 blocks of the DeBorgia town site, 20 lots. We want to do a LOMA on it. They're already doing groundwater monitoring on it. They want to find out if they're in or out. Brenda Lincoln has a house between this property and the river that's lower in elevation. Her house has been there for 37 years and it's never flooded. You know, so this is, and then there's a house behind us that's on lower ground that has never flooded, that's been there for 60 or 70 years. And we just want to do a LOMA and find out if it's in or out. And this happens to be an area where we did river cross sections, submitted it to the NRC 25 years ago, and they came up with a flood elevation for this property. And so we include all that information in our packet that goes into FEMA. And it's the same area that I did Ed Green's on 2 years ago. So it's just a shame.
Did anybody else in the room want to? Mr. Logie?
I have a question for Ken on talking about the road subdivision regulations and the road building, and I know there's, you know, you have a base and then you have the gravel on top. Does the road foreman, I was understanding that the road foreman, he usually comes out and looks at that as it's being built.
Well, it's conflicting. A lot of times, depending on the subdivision, they're done by an outside engineer. But I've done many of them that don't require. It says that you're supposed to do it to Montana State Highway specs. I don't even do gradations. They just accept what you do, but it has to be crushed gravel. But you know, there's only been one crusher in this county in a private pit in a long, long time.
Right.
So there's other pits in town that guys are using gravel out of that are screen gravel. They're not crushed gravel. There's no gradations done. There's nothing. So
yeah, well, like I say, I was just wondering who came out and, you know, on somebody rejected some of yours apparently.
Yeah, it was the road foreman back in the day at the directive of the planning office.
That's the point I was trying to get at.
That's where we had the confrontation with with Mr. Donovan, and Mr. Reed, and the road foreman. So,
Because I know it's pretty black and white in the specs.
oh, it's really black and white.
There's no variance there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, you know,
And that's a bad deal, because the specs aren't necessarily in best interest in Mineral County. Crushed gravel is, I have a pit that has crushed gravel. I used to, I just sold it. Missoula or Kellogg, I don't even think there's anything in Plains that has Montana State Highway spec crushed gravel. So it puts a real burden on subdivision people, like Lance says, to come here and try to do a subdivision when you're required to do a crushed gravel spec that costs you a lot of money to haul gravel from Missoula or Kellogg in here. And it doesn't do any good. When you put down crushed gravel, a lot of times it doesn't have a good binder in it, but it meets the state highway spec. So we did one down for Kenny Jasper, and we put crushed on there, and they fight that continually because of washboards. Where if
I
you
know
put,
it's what you're talking
if
about.
you put pit run down, it has a binder in it, and you know.
and that was terrible expensive. We had to hire a company out of Missoula to come out and do density checks
yeah.
on that as we were putting it down. All the material had to be certified. The engineer had to be on site inspecting, and we all knew that material's not going to hold up.
Yeah.
You know, it's too clean. It just washboards. It does everywhere you use it. But a good pit run material out of here with some binder in it, it's worked for years. I can take you through subdivision after subdivision where gravel roads have been built that even my family has done. And the roads hold up just fine. So why are we making such a big deal out of it and saying it has to be state spec pit run?
And
or state spec crushed?
If you're going to put asphalt over the top, then crushed is the preferred thing. But if you're not going to asphalt it like we don't do in Mineral County, then why the expense? So we've over-regulated Mineral County, and then we don't follow through on how we implement it or administer it. Doesn't matter whether it's sewer, whether it's county roads, whether it's driveway approaches. I mean, you can drive up and down this county, and you all drive by them every day and see them where these driveways are just put in everywhere without permits. You know, there's one out our way that just went in that's got an old piece of black pipe stuck in there. It's all rusted and bad, and the water has to run uphill and get out of the pipe on both ends. So, you know, and we have county officials that drive by that every day, yet we don't regulate those things. So all of a sudden we're going to regulate somebody over a sewer situation when we don't follow the rules on other things. So that's my complaint. And along with the other things, the addresses are a big, it seems to me like the addresses are a huge liability to the county.
So yeah, I wrote down, Ken, the address one, and then you kind of mentioned the food inspections, and then the road building one. But back to your original one with the sewer thing, it's primarily that speaking to other people, outside parties about your situation, or was it the slandering part you were
Both.
mainly, or the part that you need to have a permit for, or go back to that one kind of.
First, I think it's unethical to speak to people in the general public about anything that's going on a private basis. That's just isn't done in common practice. To me, that's a liability.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. The fact that they've never been on the property and they're basing it on rumors is a huge issue for me too. A normal process might be to investigate if that was the case and to send a certified letter or have the county attorney involved and do it right. Don't jump people in public. That's just not what this county was built on. That's not what we're about here. And that's a representative of our county that's doing that, and you guys are his boss.
Mm-hmm.
So what other course do we have but to come to you guys and tell you our complaints?
Right.
In hopes that you will take action and investigate and find out if my allegations are true, and if they are, to take appropriate action. I can't find in the regs, maybe Ellen can look through here and,
And I think there's additional ones too.
well, then it should be made available to the public. This is what I got when I went in there. So if there's additional ones, if they're conflicting, then we should know which one applies. Because this one certainly doesn't give Tim Reed the authority to do what he did to me. So, do we pick and choose which one we use, or as an addendum to this one, or how does that work? That's my question to the county. There's ambiguity in a lot of this, in a lot of these county regulations.
Anybody else want to speak? Pro, con? Well, I'm glad the county attorney was here, and I took some notes, and we also have the advantage of the video, and so we can probably sit down with our HR and our county attorney and...
So do we have a motion to investigate them? Or is it, we probably maybe will sit down with our county attorney and talk? Or do we assume that if you don't make a motion that you accept these practices and regulations?
I don't know if we need a motion to investigate, but you have my word, we'll look into it. If that's good enough, if that means anything to you.
Oh, sure. Definitely.
So maybe we just set a date where we can come back and hear your findings.
I'd like to know when I'm gonna get some addresses
Okay.
for jobs I'm doing. I mean, that, you know, all I can say is in Sanders County, we have a sanitarian, we have a planner, and then we have rural addressing. There are 3 different departments. So when I want a rural address, I call them, and the rural address department gives me an address. It's not the sanitarian saying, well, I'm gonna hold this back till I know what you're gonna do on your property for a septic system. And that's what my most recent client said. He called me back and he said, so I have to have a site evaluation done by the county sanitarian before I can get a rural address? And it's just on a piece of property that he just bought that he wants to know what he can do with it. And it's marginal. It might be in or out. We have to do the moment to find out.
No, we will look into it. And
Well, this is not the first time you've had this brought to you, so that's why, you know, I'm a little emphatic about hoping that we move forward with something here, because you can't let it go on this county. You're deterring business here. We scramble every day trying to bring business to this county, and then we deter it by regulating things that are not even applicable to our county. And we don't apply them evenly across the board to people, so.
I guess we could have a future date to, you know, make sure we get back to you guys, what should be.
That sounds fine if you want to put it back on the agenda, just to make sure we keep track of it.
Well, we're only going to be going to May, so how much time do you think is sufficient for us to look into it and kind of come to a conclusion?
I'd say a month,
So,
a couple weeks at least, so.
so in May.
And just set a date so we know that we have to.
So May 18th, is that too soon?
I've got a jury trial on May 18th.
Oh, wow.
Just found out yesterday. I've got a jury trial on the 18th.
And then,
25th.
are we going to be on the 25th? Is everybody leaving town?
No,
25th? Okay.
Dead open so far.
May
What's the
25th.
date?
May 25th.
That's the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. Is that okay with you? Is that a good date, or are you going to be out of town?
I don't have my calendar with me, but I think I'm good.
Okay. So if we put it back on the agenda, Casey, May 25, and is what time's better? 9, 10, 11? For people driving?
It don't matter to me, but I've been trying to get an address since January.
Well-
This is 5 months
Well, if
for an address.
we're not
You
saying,
told me 2 weeks, about 3 weeks ago to look into it.
Yeah, I did
So I'd
ask for a
like
few
an
more
answer
weeks.
on the addresses a lot faster.
oh,
Yeah.
we're just saying maybe what we decided
Yeah,
worked. But
kind of
if,
2 different issues.
right, I'm sure that there will be some kind of conclusion to that specifically before that, but just to
Okay.
let Ken and everybody know what we are deciding to do on the other aspects of it.
Let's do it at 9 in the morning again.
9?
Since it is.
Yeah, I like 9 too.
Okay,
Well, thank you for your time.
Yep.
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the 25th. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, we're here at 10 o'clock, or, yeah, 10 o'clock. So we'll start the next meeting at 10 o'clock here. It's a letter of support, Willy Peck, possible action item. And, okay, so this is a letter of support for the salvage. I thought we were maybe talking about.
Well, no, we are, the salvage, you guys can read through that anytime.
Okay,
It's got to be in by the 17th of May.
okay.
So whenever you guys get a chance, you can read that.
May 7th.
See if you want to make any changes or whatever. You don't have to do that today.
Okay. And so the other,
Today is the SBA set aside program.
okay. Recomputation of the SBA National Forest offerings on the Lolo Market area.
Yes.
So in a nutshell, I can read it too, but
Okay.
give us the spiel.
Well, it's a pretty brief spill. With the purchase of the mill by IFG, Tricon used to be a small business. And with IFG now a large business, then the share is going to change. Are you guys familiar with how the SBA works? Okay, well, I'll give you a quick scenario of that. The Small Business Administration is in place to protect small businesses so that they have an opportunity to bid fairly and competitively on a percentage of the sales that come up on any given forest. And this market area includes, well, I'm not sure. I think some of the Kootenai, and I know some of the forest just over in Idaho over Hoodoo.
Clearwater?
Yeah, yes.
Clearwater or Panhandle?
Clearwater.
Clearwater.
And it's just a portion of that. So anyway, the big thing here for us, of course, is the Lolo. And so anyway, what the Small Business Administration, they calculate percentages and they're recalculated, I believe, on a 3-year basis. And with Tricon historically being a small business, they bought timber sales as a small business, so that as far as the calculations for the SBA, that's how the forest is now at whatever the maximum amount is for the forest that they can have as SBA. Well, with the change now over with IFG coming in as a big business and operating where a small business mill used to be, they have to go through what they call it a structural change to go from small business to large business. And there's a couple ways they can do that, and I'd be blowing smoke if I said I understood all of those ways. But the way that we're promoting and what we're asking you guys to support here is it's a 3-year period, and that 3-year period, it starts, as the letter says, April 1, and it ends on March 31st of 2021. So it's that 3-year period. No matter what we do, that's the 3-year period. And all we're asking for, and historically what gets done there is they offer all those sales during that period as an open bid. So anybody can bid on them, large business or small business, either way. Anybody can bid on those sales. There's no designation, nothing triggers the SBA. And then at the end of that 3-year period, they will calculate those percentages of how the market was dealt, who bought what sales, if they were a small business, if they were a large business. And then they will do a calculation based on that 3-year average, assuming that 3-year average is predictable for what the industry needs. And if we don't do it as open sales, if we leave the SBA in there and let that continue to operate, it's not going to give us a true picture of who needs what, because it's going to set a certain amount of those sales aside that aren't open for bid. They would be just specifically for small businesses. So.
Which would not be you now.
It would not be us,
okay.
Yes. And so it was, the calculation would still be a little different, but doing it that way, but it would skew it, in our mind, it would skew it in favor of the SBA, Small Business Administration. So anyway, so that's all this letter is doing is asking, that 3-year period is going to happen. There's not going to be a change to that 3-year period. It's going to be a structural change. Those two things are given. The only thing that we're trying to do here is get support to make those 3 years all as open bids, so that we let the market determine where those logs should be going.
And then after the 3-year period in 2021, it will revert back to the SBA.
Then they'll take that, whatever's happened over that 3-year period, and do a recalculation for the SBA percentage based on what the sales were during that time. So, you know, it's going to be important for all of us, including these other mills, to make sure that we're doing business out here in everybody's market area, so that we can keep this thing rolling. And, you know, as you guys all know, most of the activity that happens is right here. And if those other mills don't step up and come to the plate, you know, we're going to help them just like we always have. We write comments on every project, from clear from Deer Lodge to Kalispell, or to Libby and Eureka. You know, we participate in all those things, but we never get anything back. So it's important, and I hope these other mills recognize that importance, that they will step up here and get involved. I mean, even here, so that we get this pool of logs available here to all of us. And so that's all this letter does. That's the only thing. The intent of this letter is to support the 3 years of open bidding for the calculation on the SBA. And that's about as good of explanation as I can give you for it. So,
Mr. Representative from Helena, do you have any?
I have a little question, and that would be, if in this 3-year period, if IFG gets quite a few of the bids, then that would skew the calculation so that it would make it available for larger business. More of the bids for large business, yes. Too. But it still won't. If the small mills step up, they'll still be in the mix.
They will always be in the mix. The only 20% will always be, no matter what happens. If IFG buys every sale, there will still be 20% of the market set aside for SBA. That's as low as that number can go.
That's kind of the bottom line of the question.
And so, but yes, if IFG buys every sale, then it's going to be the very lowest. But if all we have to do is have, you know, Pyramid or some of those folks, Sun Mountain, or any of those small businesses buy a portion of that market share, and then that will be different than the 20%. So, and those folks recognize that. I mean, they're as cognizant about what's going on here as I am.
Right, it's an investment in their future to partake and buy too.
Exactly, and you know, I really hope that, you know, we've all talked about here locally about the efforts we do, and you know, I really do hope that this stimulates some additional comments out in the range of things out beyond this here. So
Willie, if this wasn't left open, is there a chance that, like, these smaller mills may not even bid on those sales anyway?
If they don't, then that would adversely affect their position too. Yeah. If there's an SBA sale that doesn't go SBA, once there's a trigger set, and that percentage is set, and we trigger a timber sale, if an SBA mill does not buy that sale, then that will definitely change the percentage that's set aside when the recomputation is done in the future.
So having it open really affects all what's going to happen is going to happen.
Yes, all it does is ensure that that everybody gets a fair market share. That's all that does by leaving it open. Now, you know, if there's a certain amount of those sales that we can't bid on, then it doesn't give a fair assessment of where that market is. And so, anyway, that's the only thing that we're trying to do as a company, is to get some support to make sure we end up with that 3 years of open. The computation's going to happen. It's going to be a 3-year period, and it's going to be a structural change. The only thing we're trying to do is make sure that those sales are all offered for open bid.
And I think it still shows that it is fair to the small companies. If they're willing to participate, they'll be considered in it. And if they don't participate, they've sunk their own ship a little bit, so.
Yeah.
So it's a fair.
Yeah, and they will. They'll, you know,
Yeah.
they're,
Well, you know, TRL and
yeah, oh yeah,
Pyramid, they're gonna-
absolutely.
They need logs.
You bet. And, so, you know, it's just a fair bidding practice or process here for 3 years that, and then it'll be recalculated and whatever the numbers come out then, they come out. So, it's a pretty,
Question
pardon?
for Willie. The last large businesses, I would guess, were Stimson. They probably qualified.
Yep.
And was Smurfit considered?
You know, I don't know that they were.
Because they could buy sales and then broker the saw logs and take the rest, you know?
If they did, then they would have been considered, certainly.
Because when Jack Barber was there, I'm sure they did buy some bigger sales around the Lolo and broker the saw logs to other mills.
Right.
But
I bet, I wouldn't think that even that much activity would have triggered the SBA. I don't remember on the Lolo ever triggering the SBA deal.
Oh, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I do remember.
Oh, do you?
Shortly after I got here, I think, and maybe Vern Walker did on something, because he did have a sale or two back then.
I've seen it trigger in other places on other forests, but I haven't on the Lolo, so.
And that's back when they sold cedars, so you know what that was.
Yeah.
But you know, we, with Tricom being a small business, and we did buy the lion's share of the wood in the area, naturally, it's in our backyard, so, it was, there would be no reason to trigger that.
So
At least
since
during our.
IFG is here now, how is that changing the math or the formula from what we were doing the last several years since Stimson left? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it will change the formula.
Yeah.
There can be no doubt. And that's all we want to do is see this open bid for 3 years, and then then take that bid activity and calculate the percentages how it should be done at that point. So even if IFG bought 100% of the sales, which we won't in this market area, it would still be no more than 80% or 20%, or no less than 20% SBA set aside. So the most that you can ever have on the forest is 80%, and that's how you can open bid. So.
Okay. So this letter would go to the Forest Service. Attention, Dan Castillo.
Yep.
So, okay. Do we have any more questions for Mr. Peck regarding this letter supporting that SBA recomputation?
I wonder if it needs to go to the forest supervisor or the regional forester.
It's going, I have a sheet here that's put out requesting comments, and the address is there. The address that's on this is on that. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
it says right in here, the forest supervisor, and then attention, Dan Castillo.
Delegated to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And all of our communication has been with Dan, so.
So do you have a letter that you'd like all three of us put our John Hancock on?
That'll be it. You can just put it on your letterhead.
On the letterhead in case I have.
And I can,
Okay.
do I need to send you a wire on that, or?
I can try to scan that one and see
Okay.
if it
Yeah.
All right.
works.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the letter, the recomputation of the SBA National Forest offerings on the Lolo Market area.
I would second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And like the other letter is the final comment that's out right now for the Sunrise Fire.
Okay.
And as you guys know, that we can't have, we can have very little effect on adding any volume. We can take volume away from that sale, but with the NEPA written already, to add any additional substantial volume would require some amendments or some additional things done to the NEPA. So we're not asking for that. And the time frame is we just don't want to screw up the time frame. They have things going their way that we're going to see the sale early. So all we're doing is asking for some contractual things to be done, and through the collaborative we're doing that, and just some things that will make it hopefully sell for more money, you know, and instill a little bit of confidence in those folks that do bid on it. It's as far as salvage is always a concern with quality, so but they'll sell. We just hope, we'd like to see them sell for a higher price. I mean, that's how we will survive here as a county. So
Willie, I haven't studied the NEPA yet, but is there a component for roadside hazard tree removal?
it's that's in my letter here for the commissioners, and it's in the one that we wrote for the collaborative, and of course ours. It's a real limited. It just identifies hazard trees. So it would be something they go along and identify specific hazard trees along the road. They've already done some of that, and they're going to ask us to do some more. All we're asking for is if we do that, let us go up the hill as far as we can reach, get those trees down, if they're dead, if they're burned, and salvage the entire area rather than just try to piecemeal it.
Yeah, it makes sense to do at least the tree length.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Like
that the letter's asking for that.
That's what we did with the beetle kill. You know, we went about 100 feet, just
Right.
kind of rounded up, or it's domino effect.
You're right. You know, and if you get on the steep hillside, you can certainly go further. And so
Willie, when I was helicopter logging in 2003, we were up the North Fork of the Flathead on a state set. No, it was a 477. And they had alternative units, and so they could take a look at those units. The unit was marked out, and they could take a look at those units, and if they determined that it was profitable to go in those units and take some of that out, they could do that. Do they do any of these like that
they did
today?
not do that. We asked for that in our original comments. It's called either optional or volume subject to agreement, and we asked for more of that on the Sunrise, and they didn't do any of that, and we certainly wish they would have, but it's not. There's so much volume out here that's going to have to be moved in such a short time. We probably have enough anyway. I hate the thought that we're going to ride off into the sunset, leaving millions of board feet up there on the mountain. And but
I think under their process too, I think they felt maybe that would slow them down to have to consider too much of that. And
Well, all they have
and
to
that
do
was-
is paint a boundary. I mean, I've been on them before where even
But they had to
actually
justify it too.
you painted the trees as you worked, and then they inspected it. You know, I mean, it's burnt, it's dead.
you know,
But that was with a helicopter.
Right.
It wasn't with a line machine or tractor. But
we're walking softly here just
Yeah.
because this NEPA team, the West Zone NEPA team,
they're trying.
has predominantly been the leader in
Yeah.
all of this stuff, and we appreciate that, and that's in the letter. Our district rangers here on the Superior and the 9 Mile, and of course Plains Thompson Falls, they've been great to work with. So, you know, I don't want to beat them up, and they got out, they did a lot of work in a short period of time. They did try to rise to our request to get these things out early. We said in the 2J months, July and June and July, and we're going to see Sunrise certainly in the first part of June, and probably Sheep Gap second part of June, first part of July. So, you know, we feel like they stepped up, tried to do their part. So, yes, we like to have seen more.
Yeah.
And they could have done more. They're all run very. They're afraid of litigation, all those things that come, and you know, we're trying to get them over all that and to get this thing going. But so,
All right.
yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So after we get this on letterhead and sign it, just email it back to you,
No, I just send it right straight to.
straight to them?
Yeah,
Okay.
right to that address and,
Okay.
yep. And, so, one
Is
other
there
thing
a
I
date
just,
that has to be?
yes, it's like the 5th of May.
Okay.
So
So pretty soon.
We'll get it.
today would be
We'll
great.
do it today.
Yeah. Well, has the county received the SRS funds yet?
Not yet, I don't
Don't
think.
believe so.
Do you know the amount yet? Okay.
It's for the current year and the back year that they
Right.
did not, so.
Yeah. Yep.
So you'll be doing some more fuel mitigation possibly when that comes?
Well, we have to see, I think they changed some of the, what you can use, I think you can use it for law enforcement now, is what that.
They added some things.
Yeah, they added some
Yep.
things, so we might look at using it in other areas, so we'll just wait and see what we get and what their stipulations are, so.
Right. Well, we'd certainly be curious when you get that, how good we did, and so we can continue the battle.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how bad you did, but it
Yeah.
comes out, so.
Well,
All right.
it was on a sliding scale that kept going down,
Yeah.
you know, and so I think the last shot we got was just under $1 million, wasn't it? And so I'm sure this is less.
It'll be a little,
Yeah.
but we got some back pay in here somewhere
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I don't know how that'll all shake out. We're curious.
Yeah.
And you know, we have, that has been a battle that we've tried to be part of the fight.
Yeah.
And so we'd like to continue that battle, and, you know, we're gonna, it's a 2-year deal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's gonna come to an end. It seems like 1 year, because it's this year and next year. I mean, it's not a real 2-year deal. We're already through this year, portion of it, and so, you know,
And I don't think they still get it, the ones that vote against it.
yeah.
They don't understand it.
No,
So
they
it's
don't.
still another battle.
Yeah, so you know, the bottom line is, we still believe that we can fund this county off of,
25% funds.
yep, we still believe that, but there's gonna be a growing period here.
Yep. It's gonna take
You
a
know, maybe we
while.
won't need $1 million, but maybe we're gonna need $500,000. You know, there's going to be, and the other thing that we wanna push for, you know, the 7-year average that figures in with that 25% fund, is that's an unfair, I mean, they're penalizing us for not doing anything for 7 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, start it today, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you guys go.
Thanks,
you,
Willie.
Willie.
Thank you
Willie.
guys.
Yeah,
So did you call Willie on the,
called him and, yeah, and he never called me back, but.
Willie?
Yeah. About the comment for Carol.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, didn't it say that letter from Matt?
Well, hey, Willie,
Yes.
did you and I need to put our heads together on the word you're gonna,
We do, when is that? That's Tuesday.
Tuesday, I think at
Tuesday,
3
yeah.
o'clock or something?
I'm headed out. I'm gone all day today. Can we talk on Monday?
Yeah,
Okay, I will
Yeah.
give you a call.
okay,
We better do that.
Okay.
It's a good thing you're on top of that, so.
yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
So did we want to include this Sunrise Salvage one too?
Yeah, that one's
Get
due.
that one done?
Yeah,
You do it today
Sure,
too?
sure.
So I'll make a motion that we, approve, or send the Sunrise Fire Salvage Project, comment letter.
I would second that.
okay. We have a motion and a second. This is a letter to the Plains Thompson Falls District. Subject is the Sunrise Fire Salvage Project. It's basically encouraging that maximum volume be harvested and move forward with the NEPA process that they've done. So all in favor of this letter, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? $11:05, we have here the Great Burn WSA draft executive order as an action item. We had visited this topic a few weeks ago and decided to let the county attorney review the language in it and also provide more time to hear from our constituents. And so now here we are again today with the final decision on if this is something we're interested in signing. I guess Mr. Gullett's about the only one who's been here regularly, and Diane McGowan, Mr. Kepke. Has, I understand that Lincoln County, did you hear that they decided to sign this?
I haven't heard.
Yeah, I seen an email to
Yeah,
that.
but they supported it.
And our House District Representative is here. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on this. I guess it's just a letter basically encouraging the United States, Mr. Trump, to encourage the Forest Service to kind of use the same consistent management styles for some of the public lands regarding WSAs. Did you read this, Bentley?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mr. Gullett, you're in favor of this, I presume?
Yeah.
Guess you can say what Ellen told us this morning.
Yeah, the county attorney said that the language seemed fairly neutral in terms of, anybody being some kind of a liability situation.
You know, you look at the way the language is for Region 1, basically, it takes away public comment. It's them managing it as wilderness when it's not. And the way the rules are written in the Region 1 for that, it's basically you're taking away public comment to comment on it. It automatically goes to managed as wilderness no matter what.
It shouldn't be.
I have a question.
Diane?
So were we able to find out anything as to previous usage, prior usage? I know I didn't do any research, but I was just curious as far as, one thing, volume. Is that going to stipulate the volume of usage? Do you know, Mike?
I don't.
We have a lot more four-wheelers and motorcycles than we used to.
But you're relating to that statement where it said historic, the historic uses. Yeah, I think,
ATVers weren't in there though, really. ATVs weren't out.
They weren't invented yet.
Yeah, they weren't a popular thing.
They were invented, there were some old things.
They were called three-wheelers.
Three-wheelers.
Yeah, but they were dangerous.
And there were some others, some jiggers, they were like a little ATV, all-terrain, even amphibious.
I think the 90s is when they really took off.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you do have to consider that use of, and I think I brought it up last time, like the Honda 90s, were in existence back. Historic use would have been a Honda 90, it wouldn't have been a big Kawasaki.
I don't
bike.
think they're gonna stipulate what size the engine is, though.
No, but if you talk historic, that,
Yeah,
but that was more of a limited type use and not a all-out, dirt bike go anywhere.
it goes back to me, snowmobiles I'm fine with. I'm glad. I mean, that's good. But I really, and I talked to Kathy Cool about it too, and, to see four-wheelers and motorcycles up on the state line trail, and I don't know if the Forest Service can actually say no, or if that allows for people to say no four-wheelers up this way or whatever. Do you know?
They can make it a special management area where they say snowmobiles, that's it.
And I would be for that.
That's what they were trying to do on the Idaho side.
Isn't there a segment of the state line trail that is coded non-motorized?
Yeah.
I thought there was a segment up in there somewhere.
I think the last part that's motorized is from Cascade Pass to Dry Creek.
But then again, does that get back into that historic?
Right.
You know, when was that sign put up there? But I think,
That,
We don't know.
the sign there says National Recreation Trail. What does that actually mean?
I think that could be a variety of uses.
It says, it's got walking, horses, motorbikes, and it says motorbikes, and then there's the sign there, it says the National Recreation Trail. It says no ATVs, and you can't ride an ATV on it.
It's just a single track, isn't it?
Yep. I mean, it's a rough trail.
So I guess that's why, you know, it would have been nice to have somebody from the Forest Service just to define some of those things, even if they couldn't take a stance or whatever, but Carol said that she couldn't really
Yeah.
be involved in it.
I think
I think that some of the historic use, because what I'm reading, like part of this letter, it says, basically they want all the Forest Service regions to be managed the same. Some units have allowed multiple use of these lands in accordance with governing law so long as uses do not diminish wilderness character, while other units have managed these areas in a manner stated in or purportedly extrapolated from the Wilderness Act, prohibiting uses such as motorized vehicles, bicycles, wheelchairs, hand carts, and chainsaws. The purpose of this order is to establish consistent policies for the management and appropriate use of lands identified in legislation or agency land management plans as potential additions to the National Wilderness Preservation System. I don't know, I take it to mean that they're just saying that you don't automatically exclude all of those bicycles, wheelchairs, hand carts, and chainsaws, and maybe even snowmobiles. Those vehicles just need to be considered for if they are going to diminish the wilderness character. And so, like someone brought up from the snowmobile thing, the wilderness character usually means, you know, people want it to be quiet while they're hiking or while they're fishing, but in the wintertime, that wilderness character is not compromised because those people aren't there, and the only ones that are there are the snowmobiles. But I think that if you were to introduce a four-wheeler or a motorcycle, then that would not be probably allowed in a area considered for wilderness, because it does jeopardize the wilderness character in that situation. But that's just how I'm reading it.
you want to remember too that the group that's taken this to Washington DC is the Backcountry Sled Patriots and the Idaho Snowmobile Association. And there is no motorbike club or ATV club going with them.
Well, and I know, what's his name that was here originally? Can't remember his name. Stan said that he felt kind of like I did, you know, but then it was kind of, the rest of it was put in there.
Yeah, I know, that's the way they had to word it.
And I think over time, that's all gonna be hashed out in the travel plan anyway.
I don't know.
Still a couple of years down the road, I would say, but.
They could put it in and say, this is the way it's gonna be, and
Yeah, but they gotta do public comment on the travel plan,
Yeah.
and that's gonna be a long, drawn out.
what are we, 20 years now?
Yeah, probably.
Something like that.
Yeah.
but I think even, like I say, even with the historic use, you look at, if it is even motorcycles, you know, they could put a CC limit on that, so it makes the small ones like the 90s, which are pretty quiet anyway.
Or limit them to road. I mean, they're not going to be going over hill
They
and
could
dale.
limit them to the top of the
Yeah,
state
so,
line.
I mean,
You ain't
that,
going any farther in Heart Lake.
so that's not necessarily compromising.
Well, I personally think it is, but, I mean, if you're trying to walk down there on a horse or something and somebody comes up on a motorized vehicle, but, so, and I think they're pretty noisy. They run them up and down our road. Yeah, they do wheelies and,
Well, but that's what I'm saying, when you limit it on the CC size, you're gonna, then you're talking the small, those old 90s were quiet and putts along at a
you know.
If you can even find one now.
50 miles an hour or something
Yeah.
like that. But I mean, you're talking,
Right.
then you're at least not compromising what they call the historic use too. Because it's been 40 years of, we've progressed mechanically and you know, I don't think anybody wants to see the rip and tear motorcycle up there. But the little Honda might be the way that somebody like me in another 5 years will get in there.
5 years.
I think I can still go now.
I think I'm there now.
But I mean, we have to think a little bit about our aging population.
Well, we also have to accept the fact that there's probably not gonna be things that we can do that we used to do.
What?
Go down through the canyon.
But I don't think.
Now I
you're-
won't sleep the rest of the night.
And I don't
You know,
know.
I don't think your letter is opening up a huge
I don't think
can
they
of
have a
worms,
head
but
of
I
the
think
Forest
the
Service
snowmobile is
either.
probably the biggest issue.
Yeah, I think, didn't they appoint somebody?
They appointed somebody as an undersecretary, but I haven't heard anything yet about appointing somebody the head of the Forest Service. They're still investigating the previous thing that went on there.
But as far like winter use and as much skiing as I used to do in the backcountry, I never saw a conflict between the snowmobiles, and if I didn't like where they were, I could easily get away.
Yeah.
Cross-country skis.
I mean, we used to ski on the snowmobile tracks.
Yeah.
Cross country, I mean, wow, that was a lot easier going. So,
I just want to say one more thing. Thank you for allowing time to look into it more. I appreciate that. Whatever the outcome
Yeah.
is, it's very appreciated.
Yeah, in the policy, it says here, it is a policy of the executive branch to, A, ensure that Wilderness Act restrictions on multiple use of public lands be confined to those lands formally designated by Congress to be within the National Wilderness Protective System. B, protect the physical resources and attributes of WSAs that make such lands candidates for addition to the National Wilderness Protection System, providing for multiple use of WSAs that does not diminish wilderness character so as to comply with governing law and best serve the needs of the American people. So it's still stating that that needs to be there. It just can't be, you know, a blanket thing. For,
Right, you're not opening
yeah,
it to.
it still is taking into consideration the protecting the attributes of if it should become wilderness without ruining it or detracting from it. And historically, snowmobiles were up there, and so I think that's just what it's saying is why, since it's not a wilderness yet, why not let it be still preserving the wilderness character, but allow a little bit more other users in there until it is actually locked up as wilderness with not even a wheelchair or handcart allowed, or bicycle. So, I don't know, I feel confident that it's not gonna like suddenly be four-wheelers everywhere on the state line, but,
I don't think there will be.
'cause
And the other thing, I think chainsaw use is important.
oh,
Oh, most
totally.
definitely.
You know, you think about even the cost to taxpayers to clear the trails, if they just go in with a chainsaw and zip, zip, and they could put a time frame on that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, early in the spring when, and just get the work done, and then the hikers
Well, and
have a clear trail.
I think
and-
it was Bert that brought up the rattlesnake allows that.
Yep.
You know, you drive up through the middle of it, and they allow chainsaws up there when they're working on the dam.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can use,
That's by government employees, right? Is that what you're talking
I
about?
would expect, yeah.
yeah.
The wilderness.
Yeah.
in an RWA, you can use a chainsaw, you can use power tools, you can have road building, you can have logging, you can have a game cart, but you can't have snowmobile, motorbike, ATV.
But if it's actual designated wilderness, then not even employees can have a chainsaw.
True.
So my worry then is, if we have a lot of wilderness areas, people will have less access because they're not gonna be able to keep the trail open.
Troy said, Doxy said there in the Bob Marshall now, people are making their own trails going around.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the outfitter says, we're constantly cutting.
Mm-hmm. It gets to be, yeah.
The one thing is, it does not say anything about the backcountry areas either, which that's Sheep Mountain, and then there's another one at Anaconda. The forest plan, the Lolo, I can't get on their thing 'cause I don't have the right link, but I'm not, that used to be a wilderness study area. Last time they made the run to get rid of the wilderness study areas, the Great Burn got it changed to a backcountry area.
Sheep Mountain you're talking.
What was that?
You're talking Sheep Mountain?
Yeah. There was Sheep Mountain and there was another one at Anaconda. Stan said there's only 2 of them that he knows of.
Probably Mount Hagen. Mount Hagen is big.
What's that?
Mount Hagen,
It might be.
by Anaconda.
But the last time they made a run to get a bunch of these, rid of these wilderness study areas, he got it changed really fast. And I don't know if he had something maybe to do with the one at, down by Anaconda or. But a backcountry area is managed as a wilderness.
That's that category that the Forest Service doesn't quite recognize, though, right?
Yeah. If you ever get one of their links where they send you update stuff on the, it's the Lolo Flathead, I think Lewis and Clark. I think it's supposed to be in there.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick word, just merely because you mentioned Lincoln County. And I think Lincoln County is still considering it. They haven't actually signed off on it. But I do believe Verley County, because, you know, as you know, they are the county that does have the 2 WSAs in it, unlike Mineral County that has the recommended wilderness. Verley County chose not to do anything on this. Their county attorney was not quite as sure that there wouldn't be a problem, so they did not. And there's one other county that is considering it. And my senior moment, I can't remember which one it is, but I just thought that might be interesting.
Yeah, I got an email that says, on April 19th, Lincoln County voted to support the executive draft order yesterday, so I guess that would be April 18th. But I don't know if voting to support it means they actually put pen to paper or.
Yeah, the person I talked to didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and do you know what Ravalli County's apprehension was?
I think they had some legal questions, namely whether or not an executive order could override the congressional designation of the the Wilderness Study Act that was passed. And there was some questions about that. And other than that, I don't know, except that they chose not to do anything on it. Again, you know, Stan Spencer and the Idaho, whose name the woman, the president of the Idaho, yeah.
What's her name?
They took it to Ravalli County Commissioners, and they chose not to move forward on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, just a question, whether emergency services are allowed. You know, like snowmobile recovery of skiers or anything like that, if that's allowed at present.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they would be. Yeah.
But chainsaws aren't.
I think you could get a permit for a chainsaw, I'm not sure.
In recommended wilderness, you could, yes.
I don't know.
But didn't you say they do tours, helicopter and plane visits over the wilderness area?
Well, I know they do
reconnaissance flights sometimes.
Yeah, and I bet that, I wouldn't think that would be way too often with their budgets.
Well, now they can do it with the drones, so.
Yeah.
You won't even know whether they're doing it or not.
Yeah, the section 4, part D says the fact that established uses occurred prior to a WSA's designation creates a presumption that those uses can be allowed to continue at historic levels without long-term impairment of a WSA's suitability for designation as wilderness. Examples of established uses include hunting, including use of firearms, various forms of recreation, motorized and non-motorized, aviation, access to private land, access to and use of livestock grazing allotments, and the maintenance of range improvements. I don't know, I just keep reading that they're saying as long as it doesn't detract from
The
character of it if it was to become wilderness, yeah.
Well, it sounds like if Verley County had some doubts about the legality of it, it's probably gonna end up in court anyway, huh?
That's what the general feeling that I've heard, not necessarily from Verley County, but.
But that's a total different thing than this.
I know, but they could stop it, couldn't they, in court?
I think Verley's is more on the actual Danes' bill.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, if they were concerned about the legality of the wording, everything ends up in court anymore. So, yeah, I just wondered,
Mr. Kepke, any thoughts before we decide what we're going to do?
I was just referring back to my notes from the last discussion on this, and I really don't have a strong opinion of it.
It seems kind of benign to me in one sense, and our county attorney doesn't feel that there's any liability if we think that it's a good idea to insist consistency across the forest in how they manage, WSAs, RWAs, all those things. I don't know.
I think motorized winter use is a middle ground overall. It still leaves half the year for non-motorized.
Well, I don't know if you've seen this map, but this map has the coding for current wilderness is green, and then there's the red is the inventoried road list that they already have, and then the Great Burn is in the checker thing. But Mineral County's basically almost the whole state line of Mineral County way to, by Dry Creek and St. Regis is closed to any kind of different use in its current form today, other than hiking. Then you can start snowmobiling in the private ground west, around Taft and then some of the forest land around Hagen and DeBorgia. But our Black Diamond Premium snowmobiling that is occurs at the higher levels and terrain, not a trail ride. That's why a lot of these people come from Washington and Idaho, is because they're good riders who want to enjoy the back country and the high country. Same reason most of us enjoy it in summer too. But riding on a trail at Hagen, Montana, from bar to bar, or restaurant to restaurant, is not nearly the same experience as what we used to have here. It is somewhat of an economy for us.
Well, I think when you look at historic use, the historic use of the wintertime snowmobiling up in the Hoodoo area and up in that area. Also, you look with that historic use was a snowmobile shop in Mineral County.
And not just one, there was actually two.
Also,
there was
AKA a saw shop, motorcycle shop.
So I think that
Yeah.
comes around full circle
Yeah.
as far as the economy.
The Arctic
too,
Cat
so.
dealer was on Diamond Road, Mick Bailey, and the Moto Ski dealer was at Carl Metcalf's old shop, John Bish. So there was
I'd
actually
forgotten about
two
that
of
one,
them.
yeah.
I think we all pretty much agree about the snowmobiles, you know.
Mhm. And that's what I would like, is if, you know, we need, until this gets decided, it's been 40 years or whatever, wilderness or not, well, it should be, the historic use of the snowmobile should be there, because it's helping our poor little county to some degree with our motels and restaurants and.
And I think the wording of not degrading it.
Right.
From future, that follows suit too.
Yeah.
Because riding on top of the snow sure does no damage to.
And there's not a user conflict. If someone wants to enjoy a great burn on a walk, they're not gonna have a problem when there's 20 feet of snow up there. I mean, they might the first mile and a half when they're cross-country skiing on Trout Creek Road, but they're not gonna probably be up
No.
past Dalton Lake, I don't imagine. I mean, that would take Lance Armstrong 2 days to do that.
Well, remember, I skied the state line from Joe
Yeah, but you were like Lance.
Saltese.
Back in the day, you were Lance Jr.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, anyway, we've talked about this for 33 minutes approximately. Do we have any idea of whether this is something to do or not?
I'll make a motion that we support the executive order.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to support, and I presume that means sign
Yep.
the executive order to have the wilderness study areas and recommended wilderness areas be used to their historic purposes until as such made wilderness. And so do we have any further discussion before a vote is cast? Okay. Going once, twice. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Being none. Okay.
All right, again, thank you for exploring it more thoroughly. I
Yeah.
really do appreciate it.
Well,
I've learned a lot.
thanks
It's
for
been interesting.
coming and being involved. We don't have a whole lot of folks here, so thanks for being involved.
Just remember, nothing will probably happen until they do get a Forest Service.
Chief?
Yeah. And I don't know.
Well, I think snowmobiling's almost over by the number of cars going up the road recently.
Mm.
It's really cut down. There's a few.
I saw some headed up there on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, there's
There were
still a few.
people who went up at the
Some of them
top.
like the harder snow.
Yeah, come on up to the table, sir. What's your name for the record?
Steve Wilmer.
Steve Wilmer, okay.
We've got.
Oh, you?
You can do it after.
Do it on the way out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, take your topic.
So Mr.
Okay.
Wilmer, yeah, this,
I live out on Miller Lane, out in the subdivision out there on Mullen Road, west. And I have a guy that's gonna expand the road, and he didn't give any kind of notice, not even a letter in the mail. And now he's shoving stuff, putting a big pile in my yard of stuff I have in my yard that was next to the road. And he's also telling my neighbors that a trailer that's been there and a trailer spot, the trailer's been there 18 years, and the trailer spot's been there for 30. And it was actually, the trailer spot was actually built by his father, which was Howard Miller. And now he's, doing all this stuff, and I just don't understand it. I checked with the planning department, and they don't know nothing about it. And he drives all these T-post stakes in my yard, acting like a surveyor. I just don't know how the guy can just do this sort of thing,
so, you did check with the land planner? Was he
Yeah.
in when you visited with him?
Yeah, I asked them if they'd received any notice from him that he was gonna expand the road, and they didn't know anything about it.
So the name of the road being expanded is Miller Lane?
Yeah,
Is it a private road?
it's on the county maps. It's set up for 30-foot wide, I think it was on
Is
the
it
plot.
part of the subdivision up there?
I'm not sure. I think it was a remainder sale, I think is what they call it. I'm adjoined with Peggy Stewart and other people, I think their names are Ackerson or something like that.
Oh,
about 4 acres. It goes from Miller Lane down to Mullen Road.
And so he's widening it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He's widening the road. Now, he's made these T-post stakes. He put a couple in my yard, and one of them is just right dead in front of where my trailer sits. You know, and this is like 30 feet from the middle of the road. I understand easements, and I know a road, county road is what, 30 foot wide, somewhere in there?
30 or 35. maybe.
Yeah. And, you know, as this road's gonna expand, I got my power pole, the phone box, the main junction box for the phones that service my neighbors and mine.
Why, did he say why is he expanding it?
He's been claiming he's been doing it, he's gonna do it for a while. I had planted trees along the edge of the road because of the dust. Every time they come flying up and down the road, it just created a big old cloud of dust every time. So we put those trees to kind of block it. And he just, I've never gotten along with the guy. I'll tell you the truth. You know, he always comes around and acts like the landlord, you know, and he don't own it. But they have that road that services, you know, about 3 or 4 of the places up there. You know.
But you have an easement on that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We bought that about 30 years ago.
Have you got survey stakes on your corners?
Yes, I do.
So how does that line up with what he's doing?
The pin on my northeast corner, it's about, I would say, 15 feet off to the center of the road. The other corner never got a pin put in on the northwest side. And this is where the north end is what borders the whole road right there. And it's been, you know, I don't know when the survey was done, the first time when we bought it. I actually inherited it from my mother, and I've been living there for 30-something years now. And there's two homes there, a mobile home over here and a mobile home here. This one's mine, this one's my mother's.
What day did you speak with the land?
Last week sometime.
Last week?
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually never talked to Tim. I just talked with his secretary,
Oh,
I
okay.
guess she is.
Did you notice if he was in today? Did you try to speak?
Yeah, I did. I looked in there when I came in earlier when I saw you
Yeah.
and checked to see if he was there, and he wasn't.
Okay.
So this guy that's doing the work, does he live around?
Yeah, yeah. His name is Rick Miller.
Oh, yeah, Ricky, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The stakes he's putting in, is he putting them behind your survey
Yeah.
pins?
Yeah, it's quite beyond, well beyond.
You know, and I don't know what the situation there is necessarily, but sometimes on property lines, a road would be in, the center line of the road might be on the property line, and the road would come partly on yours and partly on your neighbor's property. And I'm not saying that's the way it is there, but that's the way sometimes they are.
Right.
So, without knowing exactly what kind of a road easement, that should probably be either on a plat.
But yeah, but isn't it
should be
already a
on-
subdivision and that road should already be established?
Not necessarily put in the right place.
Yeah, that's.
Sometimes they weren't always put in the right, sometimes they used whatever was there, even though the boundary points. And so that's why without paperwork, it's a little hard to figure it
Yeah,
out.
is
for
there
sure.
any obvious advantage to why you want to be doing this work?
I don't really know. I mean, he doesn't have any other lands that he's selling up there. He does have a construction company up there. I think he belongs to Sally. He just works for her. I don't know if he owns it or not, but.
So that's why I was wondering, by doing this road work, does it help other land become accessible and therefore sellable?
Not that I know of.
Oh.
Most of the division was up Sunnyside. You know, it splits into 3 ways. You got Shaw Gulch, you got Miller Lane, and then you got Sunnyside goes straight up.
Yeah.
And then that's most of the subdivision up there.
Usually people don't want to expend time, resources, and money unless there's going to be some beneficial outcome, so I'm wondering.
Some return.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing is he's totally blocked my driveway now. I can't use my driveway. He's got big old concrete blocks that he just piled them all up right there alongside the road. And it actually blocks the access to my driveway. And I'd let the sheriff's department know about that, because I'd like to park there if I want to, you know. And apparently, I found out he's doing similar things to Lipinski, Michelle Lipinski.
So what's your address, Mr. Wilmer? On
121 and 135.
Miller Lane.
Yep.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you don't see Mr. Reed on the way out, then we'll try to visit with him and see what's going on out there.
Okay. I appreciate your time.
Do you still, how do you get to your house now with the blocks and?
I can come up the access from Mullen Road. I've just got a field there, so I can just drive up right up the hill and get to the back side of my trailer there.
Okay.
I wonder if Ricky Miller found out that that road that he put in there is not on.
And that's
where
why I
it's
asked
supposed
that,
to be.
asked that question, because that's what I was thinking. Maybe you
The other
realize.
half of that road may not be road, it might be on somebody else's property.
Yeah, that happened with T-Bird Lane. It's in the wrong location and never got corrected.
But a good neighbor would at least come and talk and say,
Yeah.
here's our problem. And
Not
here's what-"
stack stuff in your
Yeah.
yard.
Well, I was there when they originally did the survey, and I remember them doing little points along the road, and the road takes just a little jog to the north, kind of right where it passes our place. I don't know if they did that because of the power pole and the telephone box there, but it, like I said, it's been there many years.
Yeah, but that sometimes, like in St. Regis, they found out some of the surveys even cut off corners of houses.
Yeah.
Because they were wrong, and it may be that road he just used, or whoever used what was established. And so it depends on how the easement is laid out on paper, and sometimes roads are within your property line and sometimes they're outside of it, so that should be documented, and I'm sure Tim Reed would be able to find that documentation on the plats. That's what I think would be the reasonable.
Yeah.
And then, Mr. Wilmer, this started approximately a week ago, or when did it?
Yeah, a little more than a week ago.
Okay.
I actually been staying with my girlfriend, and I came home one day, and here's about 3 or 4 T-posts driven in the ground. You know, and most of them were, you know, like dead in front of my driveway, and then another one down by this exit of the other trailer that I have there. Right, almost dead, right where you always have.
But
to
he
turn.
put those in there.
Yeah, he put them in there.
But he's not a surveyor.
Exactly, that's the way I felt. You know,
I don't know.
What did the sheriff's office get back to you on? What were they going to talk to Tim, or what were they going to do?
Yeah, I had let him know what was going on yesterday, and I haven't spoken with the deputy yet.
Have you spoken with Ricky since?
No, we're not much on speaking terms. And I just soon avoid any kind of confrontation.
Okay.
Sounds
Well-
like the sheriff's office might even nudge to keep the peace and get things straightened out.
Yeah, we'll find out from Tim first. See what-
Yeah, combination.
All right, well,
Well, I appreciate your time. You know.
doesn't sound like much fun. Thanks for telling us.
Well, it's got me concerned because of the way he said to my neighbors about, you know, I'm gonna have to leave my trailer. It's been there 18 years, and the trailer spot's been there 30 years. So I was never notified of that when it was built. You know, Howard Miller built it for me, put in the septic and everything for me.
Really?
You know,
Yeah.
exactly in that spot. You know, where all the utilities are. So again, I think.
Okay.
You bet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, stop up and visit maybe Tim's Inn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. And we still have public comment if anyone else at the table has something.
Speaking of roads,
Speaking of roads.
people are still steamed in St. Regis about the chauffeur situation
The trees.
and the hazard to the park and the public.
Did we tell you what, Lori and I went with T-Bone in to talk to DOT, and Steve Felix produced a document that he seemed to believe, they said that it wasn't his problem.
Yeah.
And then Finley, you talked to T-Bone about it too, and then somebody maybe found something that showed it was purchased in 1950 by the state.
Right. I think Tim found that.
Yeah.
So that, and I think that's important that that one does get resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Just partly because of your land, your road swapping.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking of, you know, and this all kind of ties together. The road that goes underneath Sear. Which one is that?
Juniper. Juniper.
I still think if that's a state road.
It's owned by the state.
Yeah.
He called it a remnant road, and he said, we've never maintained it, although they put chip seal down on it. I don't know what year they did that.
So what happens now, why, they own Reserve Street. Reserve Street doesn't serve its function anymore, or didn't, and so they're talking widening, or they did widen the road through Reserve Street. And that was a liability that they had to keep traffic flowing through Missoula.
And they have a liability right there.
So they have a liability there in St. Regis, I believe, if it finds out, but they also, I think, have a liability on Juniper Lane.
Yeah, I specifically asked him that. You own the road, but you don't want to maintain it. I said, there's a sharp corner with the railroad tracks directly below that someone goes off the end of that. There's no guardrail, and it's an icy road. What if they go down there and right when a train's coming by and get hit by a train? That's liability. He just kind of shrugged his shoulders.
Yeah, and I think that's the angle you need to push, is that liability on that, because I know the subdivision went in down there, and yeah, okay, it probably shouldn't have gone through because of, until that road was fixed up and brought to specs, but it was, and that's a result of the freeway being built.
Mm-hmm.
But that remnant is still in the state. If the state had wanted to give it away way back when, or made,
Mm-hmm.
if they made specifications when they bought that land, the right of way that said this road or land south of this road can never be used for residential or more
Mm-hmm.
than what's there, they would have covered their liability, I would think. But the fact that they, unless they could produce a document like that, I think I wouldn't be so willing to trade for that road. I think I would push them for that ownership, and then I think maybe check with Tim Reed on this, or have somebody look it up in the clerk and recorder's office to see if they find any kind of ownership on that piece of Camel's Hump that he's saying they don't own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, because you know as well as I do that the state has maintained that chunk of road from there out to the Joe.
And that doesn't necessarily say ownership, but it does.
Well, what does it say?
That was an old state, but that was the old state highway, and if Tim came up with, well, they
according
could just,
to Tim, or according to Mr. Felix, that part of the road was not state highway. He said that when the highway went over there, that was with a lease and MOU agreement with the Forest Service to go over Camel's Hump. And he said that he believed the actual state highway turned prior to those trees and went along the St. Regis.
that was the 1944 version, or
Mm-hmm.
19 something in the 40s version. But in 28 was when Camel's Hump was being built.
1928?
Yeah.
And that was the Yellowstone Trail.
So, but I think it's still, you need to, well, Ellen or somebody needs to look up that document.
If the state doesn't own that piece into there, what keeps coming into my mind is, why did they make Walt's Dairy Bar move?
No, they said they owned to that part.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was beyond,
That's
right
as
at,
far as
kind
it
of at
went?
Shover's Corner was about where he said it ended.
Isn't that convenient?
Right.
But he told Jason that they wouldn't maintain any further than the four-way stop.
Yeah, he said they already were dropping their blade there to be nice.
Well, I don't know, I met with Tim Friday after being in here,
Mhm.
and I got another copy of the map that shows that weird shaped parcel around Mullen Square, where the old
Mm-hmm.
three-way railroad
Yeah.
intersection was, okay? And from the width for the length of Schober's contact with that road, it's an 80-foot right of way. And Tim kept referring to it as it's a public right of way. Public right of way, but right, nobody wants to claim it. And then when it hits the national forest line right there at that problem hedge, that spruce hedge thing, it bumps out to 120 feet. And I guess that's not important, but the 80 feet through Schober's clearly are being violated. You know, the public is being violated, and it's a public hazard. And it always comes back around, well, who's going to be liable when the inevitable finally happens? When there's a wreck there, or death or injury, because there have been a lot of close calls with vehicles and kids on bikes.
Well, the entrance, you're supposed to go in the one way and then come out the other end, but even coming out walking, because you can't even see when you come out walking, and you got to step right out into traffic.
There's this much room from the fog line to the hedge.
Yeah.
And the public is forced to squeeze through that little corridor. And when you have hundreds of people per hour
carrying things,
walking through there, carrying things, you've got baby buggies, you've got wheelchairs, you've got, you name it. It's asinine. Pardon me, but it is.
But I think that's something that, that document, I think it was Tim that said he had that, and I think that's where you need to check the dates compared to, did Steve give you a copy of his document?
Yeah, and we gave it to T-Bone.
Okay.
And he took it to Tim.
Because I think that's where you need to just pursue it, but I think, like I say, I still think it comes back to Juniper and trying to trade in and out of all of these things, and here might be another approach, just the road going out to the state shop. I mean, all of this sort of ties together. Going out to the state shop, go right back to the city and say, that's your road. We're getting hung out to take care of 3 miles
But
of
guess
road.
what the city...
3 miles
I got
of
one
road
of
for your road.
One of the city representatives gave me their thought on that. They said, we really don't know why that's city, because nobody from the city drives out that road. Everybody uses it that lives in the county.
Well, then annex it out of the
But they
city.
get the gas tax money for it. So if they either give up gas tax money.
But it was part of the city limits, is why it ends up being city
within
road.
the city limits, yeah.
And so they should have negotiated with the highway department at the time. Or anyway, there's no reason you guys necessarily are hung out to trade 3 miles of road for city's road. So, I mean, somewhere you gotta almost take the stand, and I say Juniper would be one, and that little hedgerow, and even that going out to the shop.
So what are they gonna do down there this year for traffic control? I mean, are we still gonna leave it 2 lane, or are we gonna close it down to 1 lane?
Flea market?
Yeah.
Oh, we have to keep, we've been threatened by MDT that.
Okay, there.
And
It's right back down to it. Okay, if he says it's not their road, then go to the county.
It was MHP that threatened us with all kinds of trouble last year because of the gridlock. Admittedly, it was too much gridlock.
Oh, I totally agree. We've created our own monster there.
Yeah, right.
No
So-
doubt about that, but
And
are we gonna, there was talk once of making it just a 1 lane road and keeping part of it where you could walk in and out and not get run over.
I don't see how we can do anything but 2 lanes there.
You can petition the county now if they're saying it's gotta be county road. Petition the county to put
But the
a,
county's saying it ain't county road.
I know.
Right. So back to my conversation with Tim last Friday, which gave me a little glimmer of hope. He said that he'd be willing to draft a letter to the owners, telling them to vacate the public right-of-way, and that the county attorney would be willing to sign that letter. And I don't know, there'd have to be more research to see if that's valid, and if there'd be time limits involved, vacate the right-of-way, the public right-of-way, 40 feet from the center line, either side.
So have you ever talked to Schroeder? Maybe they feel they own that piece. I don't know.
I don't know that anybody's.
Well, I've talked with Ron Warren, this week about it, and he said he and his dad have been fighting those lines around that whole
Oh.
neighborhood forever.
Oh, I know.
And that nothing closes on all of those surveys. They're all crooked and everything's off. You know? And that Shoger's, there's something about the deed. There's something vague about the deed and that road. So he was going to do more research for us. I said, community council will pay you to get us over the hump on this. Something's got to happen, you know.
Glenn, that just a little history on that lot there that sits between Kay Moore's and then her grandma that lived right, Irwin.
Yeah.
That lived right next door there.
Yeah, the
that
vacant
lot
lot.
used to be called the adjustment line, adjustment lot.
Every survey would give them.
Yes. I mean, when the school added on there,
Yeah.
we ran into stuff. Harold Ensign owned those 2 lots there. Well, maybe he didn't, you know, and I mean, down by my place, you know, school come in there, did a big survey when I first bought my place, and then I paid another $700 to buy it back from the school because I didn't want the power company to have it. And nobody knows. I mean, it's
Well, the only
bizarre.
thing is, if the county attorney sends a letter to vacate, then that's
Then the
almost
county's
assuming
saying
the county's taking that
Right.
fight on.
Right.
And I wouldn't be afraid to do that if we knew we.
That's
had
right,
our-
but you
if
don't
it
wanna
was
do
our
that
right
if
of way.
it's-
But if we don't,
Yeah, no use, I mean,
Yeah.
because Steve said, well, if it's ours, we'll just take care of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
But he says it's not theirs.
But
So
I think it
that's-
should be up to them to prove that it's not theirs.
Well, that was his
He thought he
document.
did
He
with
thought
that.
he did.
Oh,
He-
wow.
Remember that map he gave us?
Right, yeah.
So I think that's where you
Then you had Shane Stack and
Ed Taves?
Ed Taves, like, you know, not sure, and they're going by what Steve Felix was saying, which,
But I think they have their lawyer too, and I think Juniper Lane is another
Well, they
one.
kept talking about a girl named Carla, their map lady or.
There's a lawyer that works for them right in the office, so I think he'd had her review it. But if there's a more recent one, you know, than what his was dated, that would be the one you'd go by. And I think that's what Tim had thought.
Yeah,
said he
they
had.
found a certificate of survey from
Yeah.
1950.
But like I say, I still think Juniper Lane is another one that you need to maybe pursue that from the legal, the liability. And
you show him the letter from.
No. Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to hear more.
from the homeowners?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happened was, I was kind of aghast because we were talking about Juniper and he was like, nope, off the table, we're not even gonna discuss that. We own it, but it's a remnant road, we've never maintained it, we're never gonna, don't even wanna talk about it. And I said, well, gee, if you own the road, aren't you worried about, you know, railroad grade, someone getting hurt? Well, kind of shrugged it off, you know. And so then I said, well, you know, so you're not going to maintain it, and so I guess homeowners can't maintain it because it's your land. I said, what if Mineral County just, you know, we have Tim and T-Bone saying if we can trade, you know, what if, nope, don't even talk about a trade. I said, well, what if I'd have to get by Lori and Dwayne first, but just for the sake of argument, what if we want to just maintain Juniper Lane because there's 25 homes out there, we want to take care of this problem. Would you let us maintain it? And he said, nope.
No, because
he said no. So anyway,
that's encroachment. When
I went back, I mean, I was aghast because there's a letter from '03 where Doug Moeller wrote Tim Reed, hey, Mineral County wants to go ahead, by all means go ahead. So I was like confused. Why is he saying no? So the gal out there at Juniper, Pam Reed, said, oh, how did the big meeting go with, you know, the MOUs? And I told her that comment. So then she put out this email to all the little community neighbors about it. And one of them is a guy named Justin Spring who works at Boone and Crockett. So he called Felix when he saw this email that said even if the county wanted to take it on their own, 3 gratis, Felix won't let it. So he called and Steve said, well, I'll come and talk to you at my office. So then an email comes out from Justin Spring to all the people. Oh, I talked to Felix. No, he said he didn't say that in the meeting and he's fine with he's fine with Mineral County, wants to take care of it, by all means, go ahead. He goes, so it seems to me someone, Roman Zalawi is being less than forthright in this. And now I'm pissed. What the hell? There were 6 of us in that room, Lori, T-Bone and me, Ed Taves, Shane Stack, and Steve Felix, and everybody heard. It wasn't something I just asked once and you could maybe get misunderstanding and say no. I mean, we talked about it for 10 minutes. Every which way to Sunday, I asked the same question, and he said no. I mean, in fact, the other 2 DOT guys were trying to be a little more compromising, and Shane Stack said, well, Steve, maybe, we could write it into the MOU, because his big thing was, if Mineral County takes care of this road, and then something changes in the future, other MOUs or a commissioner or whatever, and they don't want to maintain the road anymore, then past practice will dictate that we, the state of Montana, will have to continue doing what Mineral County did. And that's when Shane Stack said, well, see, maybe we could do it, but we just write that particular language into the MOU. No. So he said no. Clearly, he was saying no to what I was asking. And to have this Justin Spring guy from Boone and Crockett, because remember, he got his big L. Oh, I talked to Steve Felix, and no, he said everything's fine. It's either a big misunderstanding or Roman Zalawi is not being very forthright with us. And so now, I don't know many of the people over there, because I might know 2 people. They've come from Idaho and California and wherever. So they don't know me. So they think that I'm being the typical bullshit politician, talking out both sides of my mouth. And so then I had to call T-Bone and go, was I wrong here? What did you? And he goes, no. So he called Pam Reed and said, no, Roman said exactly what happened. So I don't know what's going on.
What you might do is, you hate to have to do that, but if you can write up a letter, you and Lori, or as a commission, and say, we met in Missoula, this is what we were told by Steve Felix. Those in attendance, put down everybody in attendance. Just send that to all the homeowners out there, so they get a letter, official, from you guys with the backup of who else was there and who heard it, and say, we hear there are some rumors going around that Steve Felix had agreed, but these are rumors, and just trying to stop those rumors because he came out directly. Kind of explain what went on at the meeting to the homeowners. Maybe that would help put it in better light. But I was just thinking maybe I might try calling the director and ask him his thoughts on a road that's not.
Well, I really don't like that he's trying to malign me with my constituents.
Absolutely.
I mean, and maybe he never dreamed that this Justin Spring guy
would
go and say what he said to him.
I'm sure he didn't.
But but that's kind of like, like I said, now there's 2 things. One, it's a huge hurdle for us to even consider taking over that road. But my first pissed off thing is, why lie about it? Even if we were willing to take it, which we're probably not, why lie about it and make me look bad to people that don't know me? Anyway, that's why I sent you that email. What the hell?
Yeah.
That's part of the problem with social media these days. Things go out so fast, and you don't even know where it's going and who got.
And there's a letter on the way to the governor's office, and
so now all the homeowners are riled up. Part of them at him, part of them at me. Part of them are sick and tired of 7/10 of a mile of this road being up in the air, not maintained. The state said it's there. They put chip seal on it, but they won't plow it. Mineral County can't plow it.
Who does plow it?
They have to take care of it on their own. And there was somebody out there before who since moved, somebody from Washington, and he actually went and paid a paving company to come out and patch the potholes. Yeah, that guy moved. Yeah, and then their homeowners association isn't set up where people are actually paying into it. So it's, 2 or 3 people.
Whoever wants to.
2 or 3 people are doing the plowing.
Typical homeowners association.
Yeah, I'm not going to pay. But thanks for plowing the road, but I don't have any money this week.
Well, the liability came up earlier. And did the school bus go down there?
No.
Okay, that's probably a good thing.
That don't seem to bother them too bad. We talked about the school bus on this road out here. What's it got to do with driving the river?
You have to have a wreck before
didn't seem to bother him too. Cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yep. Steve Felix, well, has there been a wreck?
Yeah, you got to have a crash. You got to have a crash.
There has been a couple of them out there by Second Creek, though.
We should take a couple of them old junkers off our lot out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Roll 'em
were
off
terrible.
the
We don't even know what happened to the people that were in these wrecks.
But I
But
think
we
you
got
need-
rid of 2 cars.
But I think you need to, especially the one at St. Regis, you know, more immediate for the spruce trees and get that lined out through Tim, whatever he found in the documentation.
Because I got into a kind of a heated debate with George Bailey at that site the other day after all these other deliberations back and forth, and he thought we could somehow infringe on the driving width to make a safe walking path for people, but you can't squeeze. You gotta have two-way traffic. You gotta have two-way traffic. Last year was a nightmare because they were hauling all that rock out of Jensen's.
You'd have to flag it is the only thing, and then you'd have to have the permit to be able to do that, flag it one way, and for a short distance, that means you gotta have 2 flaggers, that means you gotta have all the signs, you know, and that's the only other
I know,
option.
and that's just too much for us.
And that's a headache, yeah.
You know, and I asked them, was there anything you can help us with, signage or anything? So no, we can tell you who to rent a electronic reader board from, and we'd give you a permit to use that somewhere. That's all the help they were. Felix said that he's not getting in the middle of these local squabbles. He doesn't want to get in the middle of, you know, local landowner squabbles. So who is liable on that bad corner? Who ultimately is liable?
Whoever owns the right of way, but that's to be determined.
We got a lot of Tim questions today, didn't we?
Yeah, that's what I
Got all
say. I
kinds of
think,
generated
yeah,
Tim.
I think you go to him and then come up with a resolve on it for next week.
You know,
Because that'll give him a little bit of time to dig in and see what more he finds, and then
Yeah.
get MDT back.
Yeah, because
on
we've
the
got to revisit with him on, like you say, these trees and south side, juniper. So how do you press the liability issue with them when at the meeting we were at, he seemingly didn't seem to care?
Well, that's what I might just call the director and ask him his thoughts on the liability.
Has the director seen the Showbers incident there? No.
But there again, that'll you know, the right-of-way ownership is in question on that one. The right-of-way ownership on Juniper isn't in question.
Right.
So I think he would respond to that one, but I think in St. Regis, he probably won't. You know, that the right-of-way question has to be answered. Do I talk with my hands too much? Is that what you're saying?
No, she was
You're a typical Frenchman.
Yeah.
Can you email a photo of Showbers to him for a visual? Or-
I could do that, but it's still, you gotta know, he would, first question is, who owns the right-of-way?
I know, but the severity of it, the hazard of it, should put it to a top priority to resolve.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. You need to, according to, on his side of it, and I'm just saying on his side of it, Steve Felix came up with his resolve saying it's the county's. So I think now it's the county that has to go back and say, no, it's not. He'll just stick to that answer. If the director called him, he'd just tell
Well,
the
didn't you
director.
say Jane Eby was gonna come down and,
Yeah, didn't Tim?
You see what I'm
say
saying,
something
Glenn?
about
He'd
that
just
Jane
revert back to Steve Felix, and then he
Right.
was gonna do
Had
some surveying.
had some information or whatever.
Yeah, that's what Tim explained to me, that Jane Eby had looked it up, and this has gone back and forth so many times. I'm really
I
not-
know it,
I'm really not sure what I heard.
yeah.
But our little group, we're resigned to live with it the way it is this year, because nothing's gonna happen in time. Ultimately, that'd be a perfect location for another walking path right to the park.
That's what I said.
It ties everything together safely.
Except you're out of the resort district, you can't use your funds. over
Not
there.
yet. But they could be revising the resort boundary to
And that'd
include
be great.
things like that.
Think big, I advise, think
Yeah.
big, clear as in the mountains.
Take him to Little Joe Road.
Yep.
All the way to the state line.
Well, they're not thinking that big, they're thinking the park, not so much for collections, but for money to improve things. And
And
then
the-
Shannon Anderson's property for his events, and,
The race, the trail run,
yeah.
and take it right there to the mouth of the Joe and, you know,
Well,
But to pay the sales tax on vendors, that's,
yeah, see, that's the flip side of it, is trying to collect, shaving 3% off of the flea market income to pay for the resort tax. That's,
Just make it a fee and say you owe us $50 or $100 or whatever. And
well, the other option would be pay for a sidewalk out of what's taken in it from the flea market. Just pay the sidewalk without having it a resort area.
we don't have that much cushion, really. Since we lose money every year paying to keep the visitor center open, we're not gaining enough to do a capital project like that. So we're just gonna have more traffic guards, crossing guards, more signage. We've got more shuttles this year. We're gonna spread the parking out further away from the park.
is George gonna let you park on his? George? Is he gonna, wasn't that taped off before?
George.
The old fly shop?
Oh, Bailey's.
Yeah,
Well, they got it fenced off pretty much now. Yeah.
that'd be added parking.
Well, yeah, inside and outside of the fence, I guess. But I
Are
don't
you
know.
still recording, Mary?
Yes. Are you done?
Sure.
We are? Oh.
I don't know.
Well,
He doesn't want to be recorded.
I just wanted to
use the
say.
bathroom and come back.
I just
Thought
wanted-
you guys are done?
I don't know what else to say about
Yeah.
it. You know,
Well,
Yeah, I don't
We're
either.
just,
No, I think you
We're
just
just
need to
gonna-
hit up, try to get on the agenda next week. Tim Reed to
We
answer the
won't
questions on that.
be meeting next week.
Yeah,
Right.
next week.
That's what, we won't be meeting next week. There's Roman and I had a conflict.
Yeah.
He didn't know I was gonna be gone, so he made plans, so.
I'm going to Seiko to see track meets and music concerts and.
Oh,
And I have my granddaughter, so, anyway. So we're meeting the 10th, because we have district meetings on the 11th in
Yeah.
Flathead.
We'll be in Kalispell.
And
so
we'll be, all be in Kalispell
So our
on the
next
11th, so we're
yeah.
gonna meet the 10th.
here.
May
Here.
10th will be our regular meeting.
Will
then.
be our next
and
regular
that'll give
meeting.
Tim time to work on that stuff
Yeah.
too. In the meantime, I'll try and give the director a call on Jennifer.
Yeah. And I know Mike Tooley. And then the number 2 guy is Schwartz kid.
Maintenance, yeah.
Yeah.
He,
Maybe we need to go have lunch with him then, But
yeah.
okay. No more public comment. We'll